Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. You're in the right place if you're here for implementing UI/UX principles in SEO tools. We're just going to wait a minute or two for anyone who has a few seconds who isn't quite here yet, and then we'll get going. So Marie and I are both at home today.
Yes.
Yeah. You have a better backdrop than I do. I have way too many things behind me.
It's jelly beans. It's funny.
Yeah.
As a client, she's very, very shy. So don't ask her question.
Okay. I'll make sure we drive questions to somebody else. All right. We're going to wait one more minute and then we'll get started with the webinar. Okay. If you're not familiar with this platform, on the right-hand side, you do have a chat. You also have a question box, so feel free to go ahead and stick questions in there at any point. We'll get to them at the end of the webinar. Okay, looks like we can get started. So this is implementing UI and UX principles in SEO tools. So I'm Rebecca Berbel. I'm the product marketing manager at Oncrawl. You'll often find me talking about technical subjects, both for fun and for work. But here I'm actually here to present Marie, one of my coworkers. Marie Nauleau is Oncrawl's product designer, and she's been working with us for about a year now, and we're really lucky to have her. And you are about to see why in the next 40 minutes or so. So today, our objective is to talk about why we need UX for SEO tools, and then to talk about what do you need in order to put that in place. So what is the toolbox that you need to have? And then we'll go on to talk about a case study and implementing UX in an existing tool. In this case, that's going to be Oncrawl. So we'll give you a sneak peek into what's coming up next in Oncrawl next month. We'll talk about addressing branding, application components, and then look at user flow and specific use cases within a tool itself. Finally, Marie will wrap that up with some conclusions and some concrete takeaways. And then we'll end, as I said, with a Q&A. So feel free to ask any questions you have at any time in the question box on the right-hand side of this application. And we'll get to them at the very end of this webinar. So since we will be talking about Oncrawl as a use case, what is Oncrawl? We are an enterprise SEO and data platform that helps people make smart SEO decisions. We have two product suites, Oncrawl Insights, which contains a SEO crawler, a log analyzer, and connectors to elements like Google Search Console and Google Analytics. The second product suite is Oncrawl Genius, which is a way to align technical SEO data with data science and machine learning, with different tools that help you take your data further. So for a bit of history, Oncrawl has grown really exponentially over the past several years. So we were founded in 2013. The crawler was released for the first time in 2015, added a log analyzer in 2016, created native connectors specifically for Google Analytics and other analytics platforms. 2017, added connectors to external visualization sources like Data Studio in 2020, and in 2021 released an entire new product suite, Oncrawl Genius. Each of these elements has brought an additional complexity to our interface and to our brand. So in fact, our interface, and let's be honest, pretty much any interface of any SEO software you've used, hasn't always had the best usability feedback. And with all of these changes, we also had changes to our brand identity, culminating in a marketing rebranding last year. So at this point, there are really 2 points that stand out with Oncrawl. First is that a technical platform shouldn't be technical to use, but that is where complexity was taking us. And the second is that our interface no longer represents an extension of our brand identity. In other words, we mostly reached a tipping point where what was in place in the visual identity of the Oncrawl platform was no longer sufficient. So Oncrawl had been built with a public, so shared with other supports, design library. This was a great place to start off. It gave us a lot of flexibility when we were building, but not necessarily enough flexibility when we're designing something on our own. It was sufficient for a standard product offer, but is it sufficient for a branded product offer? So the idea was to bring all of that together and to move forward. So that's exactly what we did. What do you need to tackle this type of problem? What tools should be in your toolbox? So first of all, you need expertise. And we are really lucky at Oncrawl to have Marie, who has 7 years of experience in the field of user expertise and experience, sorry.
Yes, hi everybody, and thanks to be here. So I'm a designer of what I call the rational side. In my work, I will mainly focus on the user's needs and daily life. So I'm particularly attentive to ergonomic criteria, graphic coherence, and technical logic. And during my past experiences, I had the opportunity to work on wide variety of projects and subjects, ranging from the corporate website of a sport club to an e-commerce of a large garden center through CRM or fintech type applications.
So in addition to that, another really useful tool, basic tool, is the attitude that you take towards UX. And Marie just mentioned that she's very rational oriented. So qualities like consistency, simplicity, and the ability to listen are very important to her.
Yes, because working on more than 50 web projects taught me that all things should be kept simple in order to maintain quality and accessibility. That's what I tried to make the most for the makeover of our app. So first, I would like to present this project with some data. As you can see, we have 4 main tools to accomplish this challenge and a few hundred hours of work. The first one is Notion, an internal and collaborative tool to share knowledge and between teammates. The second is Figma, a design tool to prototype our ideas. Then you have Maze. Maze allows us to test our prototypes with some volunteers users. And finally, the last one is The Right, our design system documentation tool. So here you can simply understand our design process. First, I centralize and organize everything on Notion. Then I switch to Figma to create components, pages, or prototypes. The prototypes are mainly tested via Maze, but also internally. And depending on the user's feedback, we go back to Figma and do a new iteration. Finally, when the design is approved by everyone, I document the components in The Right. So great, now you know my process, but let's go to the heart of the matter. What method did we use? We have very quickly understand that doing the redesign and fixing all the ergonomic issues at the same time would be a bad idea. A smooth strategy for changes led our decisions. Because indeed users have habits and reflexes in their daily use of the app, and we wanted to avoid a brutal switch to them and potentially a loss of satisfaction. So we choose to only apply the new graphic charter and to make users participate in our choices. This way, users are part of our process and help us to make the best decision. I would like to compare Oncrawl with a greenhouse in which the plants grow quickly. In a place like that, you don't move all the plants as you wish because they are very fragile organisms and sensitive to the environment. So the redesign work is a real balance between what would be the best for users and how much these changes could be negative. Our app is already quite technical, so we want to avoid an additional learning effort for our users. And by proceeding step by step, we ensure that each plant continues to grow quickly and safely. At the beginning, the app was unknown to me. So first, I had to analyze all pages of the app and list everything I met. Each UI element was identified as a component to treat. This is a first documentation work, quite tedious, but extremely beneficial for me. With the choice of a smooth transition, it was easier to list these elements because I knew there was nothing new. We just apply the new brand charter. Once every component were classified one by one, I look at the full structure of each pages. This first audit allowed me to identify what needed to be fixed as soon as the new look and feel were released, and what could be treated individually, was taken into account to establish new standards. By working on small details like that, we were able to considerably improve the reading of the pages and the consistency. So, 3 steps to success. First, update our app, the front end of our app. Then, build a component library to help us build new interfaces and prepare for the future by identifying improvements in users' flow of our app. So first step, our new brand identity. Before I work on it, the marketing team did a huge work of research and graphic charter. So I'll let Rebecca tell a few words about it.
Thanks, Marie. So the idea here was that when we started looking at updating the front end, the idea is really to adopt a new brand identity, which had been in place already for about a year. So in 2021, when we released our Genius offer, it was the first and essentially the only machine learning oriented product offer from an SEO platform like ours. Since at that point, that meant we were looking at a new market with different requirements, different players, and different points of reference. We really wanted to make sure that our brand identity was in line with that. The idea was to contrast with the technicity of the platform, so some reassurance there, appeal to different and new segments and personas, and to unite different actors throughout the company so that everyone would have a common frame of reference when talking about and using brand elements. But the challenge then is how to translate that identity, how to reflect it within the Oncrawl platform, the solution itself. And as Marie has said before, we needed something that was a gradual change. This had to reflect the relationship that we had with different teams internally as well as externally. And we really wanted the branding to give a sense of belonging, of personality, not only of the application itself, but of Oncrawl as a whole, this idea of a unified brand experience.
Thanks. So far, the app interface has been designed using the Material Design Library with little customization, and it was a bit impersonal, in my opinion. By contrast, the new graphic charter created by my colleague Adria, there are shiny colors, typos, and special atmosphere, very representative of our brand. So as a first test, I just convert the app as we knew it to the new colors, thinking that this first small change could do the trick. But I must admit that the result was not very conclusive and that no one was really convinced, neither the team nor the testers. So we allowed us to find the right balance as the iteration went on. For example, replacing the existing blue of the buttons with the pink of the new logo works very well. So for now, we will use it as our primary color. From this moment, I had to face with two main difficulties as a product designer. The first is linked to the choice of a safe transition. It's frustration. As Rebecca explained in the intro, our product has grown quickly by focusing on technical solution without a product designer. In such a context, it can happen to miss the UX and to design things that are sometimes complex, not user-friendly, or restrictive. Over time, the list of UI things to improve for us has grown. The other thing is that over time and development, the documentation fell behind. And because the native UI framework was used, there were only a few mockups and no design system at all. So I really started from scratch. And what follows from what I just explained is that shortly after starting the project, I was stuck. I couldn't find the balance between the brand, the existing components to update it, the will to make it simple, and the necessity to maintain the current structure. So I'm going to share with you my trick. It's to break everything. I gave myself a carte blanche and worked on one or two interfaces as if everything was possible without limits. This is an exercise I love to do when I co-lead or lead co-design workshops because the results are always a boost. The more I explored my ideas and the more I identified what could be adapted for this new look and feel. Then, when all our key interfaces were done, we tested our prototypes with users through surveys or tests. For example, we evaluated how identifiable the calls to action were based on their importance. We also analyzed whether or not the balance of colors and margins improved the reading of the interface. And this gave us confidence that we were on the right move and that the interface was appealing and looked easier to use. The panel was not lost, and even it decided effectively on episodes of A/B testing. So we just readjust some points that might not have been appropriate. And thanks to Maze, the volunteers were able to test different paths and answer our questions. It was pretty easy to set up for us and simple to fill out for them. We also took advantage of the design sprint to compare prototypes with a new charter and evaluate its appreciations and understanding. But finally, the element that helped me the most along this process was the design system. With Insight today, I really don't regret to have led the redesign and the design system at the same time. The two subjects complemented each other perfectly. On the one hand, the discovery of the app led me to see each component one by one and to declare the design principles. And on the other hand, the more the components were in place and the easier and faster iterations and tests were to set up. So let's see more precisely what is this library. A design system is a dictionary. In a digital product like ours, there is no need to constantly reinvent the wheel of the user interface. But on the contrary, we invent our own visual language. And this language has rules and models that we define and document in the design system. For example, we define the color, sure, but we also the styles of the button, the design rules of a form, or how our messages are written. This helps everyone to work on the product. Imagine building an interface like playing with Lego. The design system gathers all the bricks and the instruction manual to build a masterpiece. So as I said, its implementations has allowed us to ensure again in design quality. I will try to explain very simply why. Let's take this example of a button. I'm a PM or developer and I'm preparing an interface where I need to place a button. How would I do it? I see that there are different types of button, primary, secondary, destructive. The button can have different sizes and properties, for example, an icon or not an icon. So, okay, I choose one, my favorite button, and now where do I place it? Next to which element, on the left or rather on the right, the design systems solve all these thoughts. It's a user guide for everyone in the team. By adding this layer of automation, we offer our team and our users a better applications of UX practices. And this library is at the same time a tool, a product, and a daily support for the product technical and marketing teams. It's a documentation of the application's graphic charter, which can also describe the communication habits and list all the components and good practices of the product. The advantage here of having a complete and documented design system is that there is no place for error or very little, and it makes the daily work of designers and developers faster, easier, and more efficient. Everyone knows that what they're talking about, how they use it, and in what cases. It's our only source of truth. So designers, developers, and other teammates, we come to pick up components when it's necessary in order to respect the principles of navigations, habits, and good practices. It's visible that some components call for other. They are nested and form a logical wall. In this way, we improve the quality of our standards through the product. This toolbox is so constantly updated and improved over time. Beyond simplifying the work between teams, we ensure a better evolution in the future. Cutting down the creation and thinking about generic, agnostic, but also modular components allow us to be proactive and to welcome new features more easily. And most of the time, we already have all the components ready and available for the new ideas we have. So to conclude this part, a year after I made my first Oncrawl components, I can say now there is no good excuses for not implementing a design system. Writing standards ensures the quality of the product through the use of components that are always being improved to integrate best practices into our features. Writing standards is also about ensuring the proper implementations of our branding and its respect. It's about maintaining consistency in all users' flow, and it's also about ensuring that when a modification is made, it's implemented everywhere. The aim is to work efficiently and faster, but for the users, it's also a message of confidence that we send thanks to this. So now you understand user flow have not moved, but we try to improve them the best as possible. We also have a better perspective to the future. How to drag improvement without redoing everything. I'll try to explain it with a concrete example, form fields. Using material design, the fields in our product are represented by a fine bottom line only and a light gray label that moves when you clicked on the field. Sometimes for drop-down lists, there is not even a label, and worse, in some cases, the fields have a completely different styles. How did I improve this? I tried to make the field easier to read by applying a full outline to it and displaying its label, always, and in bold. I also reviewed the margin rules in a vertical stack of fields. So I assigned easily recognizable styles between the help text, the label, the feedback of the platform, for example. So it's not a big change, but it adds eye catchers and sense of structure. So there is no big revolution as such. However, all these details have improved the user experience for now. As a product designer, I obviously care a lot about the feelings and the words used by our users. And when in testing session or in surveys results, I simply read, "Oh wow, I think it's much clearer." For me, it's clearly a win-win. Having deconstructed our app to this degree, now we have a list of everything we would like to improve. For this, we have defined a matrix of tools that we will put in place for new projects. the key word is obviously user-centered design. Some example here. We like to refine our ideas by asking the user about their needs. We test our prototypes through live manipulations and surveys, and we monitor usage to identify pain points. So the user research plays a major role in the design of new projects as well as in improvement one. As much as possible, we will involve our volunteer users, upstream the project by listening to their needs, their habits, and identifying pain points. But during the process design, by testing and evaluating prototypes and adapting our work, and after the release, by helping the first use if necessary, and by continuing the evaluations over time. The goal is to continuously improve the user interface, and this will come in 3 different ways. Small UI updates, like offering better options in data table, render example. Major improvements, especially in terms of navigations and simplifications of some flows. We will break structural elements and rebuild for the better. And obviously, new features will arrive and will be designed according to our new process that integrates the UX at all stages. So to conclude this preview and how I worked on the revamp of our app, few takeaways. The main thing for me is that everyone needs UX to improve the product over time. But don't try to do everything at once because it can be dangerous for you and for users. You need to test multiple solutions to find the right tools. I think it's quite the best moment to do it. And during this design flow, you need to create standards in order to ensure the quality of your product. But I think that the main message is to put user first. And finally, if I just have one word, is that it's really never too early to build a design system for your project.
Thank you very much, Marie. That sort of wraps up a bunch of things that we've been seeing even internally in Oncrawl, from surveys to tests to requests for user lists so that they can test things, and participation in all sorts of user research techniques that have led into this. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the reactions are to the release coming up in about a month. So thank you again. And with that, we're going to open up the floor to different questions. I think we have a couple floating around in the chat at the moment. I believe, let's see, there was a question earlier from Ricardo that he was wondering why we were using Notion instead of something like FigJam.
Okay. We test FigJam, but for all our needs, we thought that Notion is really more complete, and we already have all the teams in Notion, so it was really easy for us to tag someone or ask someone to add more details. And so we just have in parallel Figma, where the prototypes were made, and Notions with documentations, user flow ideas, very a lot of things, everything in Notion, and it wasn't really easy for us to apply and test this in FigJam.
I think one of the other reasons that you chosen Notion is that it really helps with collaboration in-house,
Yes.
since almost all of the on-call teams use Notion to a fairly high degree. So we have some really good Notion users in-house. And so that made collaboration a lot easier as well. Okay, let's see. Philippe asked, what tool did you use to survey the team about your different tests?
Maze for the most important test. We use Maze, and we use also Google Form for our surveys, and Google Meet for calls and live manipulations. it was really we haven't a lot of different tools, because for us Maze do the best mix, because we can connect it to Figma. So the prototypes are here, and we can put all questions and type of questions we want in Maze. So it was really, it's a cool tool for us.
That's actually a really interesting lead into a question from Xavier, who said, how easy is it to integrate elements from one tool to the next, since you showed that you have a sort of flow from one tool to another?
What? Excuse me, I don't...
Is it, how do you manage to integrate one element from one tool to the next in your flow? So do you do things in Maze that then you have to recreate in Figma, or do they work well together?
It's really the thing is that Figma, it can be connected to a lot of tools, and it guides our decisions and choices for the tools. So in the right, it just connects and it takes the components from Figma. It's the same thing for Maze. So I don't have to redo the things. I only do my component in Figma, and that's all.
Can you give us a sense of, when you were working with a user panel, how many users you'd have collaborating?
From memory, I think 20, almost 20.
Okay, so a typical user panel would have about 20 users. We have a
Yes.
question from Ivan. Do you use any product analysis tools, like, for example, Amplitude, to generate hypotheses and measure design changes?
It's a thing that I'm looking for right now, because to analyze our product today, we use Ojar at the beginning, and now we use Clarity. So we can monitor users' habits, and for example, target when they are rage click. But so we can take and generate hypotheses from Clarity live recording sessions. But I think that it can exist better tools, but I don't find it now.
So I think the tool questions seem to be fascinating everybody. Are these tools that you've been working with for a while, or are these tools that you've discovered as you had the need for them?
It's 50-50 because for example, Ojar or Clarity, I use it for years now, but Figma was pretty new for me, and so on Maze and ZRite, because it's my first design system. But I did a lot of research to be sure, and I also test many tools before and during my process to be sure that it's really the best stack for me and for the team.
Okay. We had another question floating around. Since we know that the brand guidelines were already in place, what was it like adapting that for an app? Were there any specific challenges there?
Yes, because a brand charter does not always fully adapt to the needs and criteria of a professional app. I would say that you can offer more madness on the marketing side. And the reason is simple, because an app must be efficient, fast, and easy to use, and distraction free. This is not the place for garish colors and very expressive typography. But I can really afford to make things pretty or original, because I have to focus on making it practical and recognizable, consistent from page to page, because my driving force is usability. But my process in this was quite simple. I started from the website mockups and identifying the main design patterns I could reproduce within the app. For example, a rounded button, shadows, undercards, typo styles. But there are many things that aren't on the website. So, for example, data table, long form, calendar, etc. So I test and learn. When I have something good, something that works, and that I like, I save the main principle and adapt it to similar elements.
Let's see if there are any other questions floating out there at the moment. A bunch of thank yous. And I see someone is possibly asking a question, but while they finish typing, how do you manage collaboration with other departments? So I know you've mentioned working with the graphic designer or the marketing department. Do you have any tips for how to make things go smoothly?
Oh, I think the main tips is to don't be shy, because at the first time, I think in the beginning, it was just me asking all around me, what is this thing? How does it work? And where I can find resources about this. So I think one is ask question to anybody, and especially somebody who is really available, not, for example, managers, but people who always work on the products, and organize yourself and save. Personally, I save everything on Notion because Notion is really great to link things between them. So I ask and I save everything. It's my tips to collaborate, and to every time I had something to share, I share. I everything I did and I do is available always for anybody in the team and for other teams. You can now you can open Figma. I see what I'm doing. So for me, it's my way to collaborate more easily. It's, hey, I did this. Look, what do you think about it? And it's really really smooth and natural, I think.
I think that makes it easier to work with you as well, so people know that you're available, that you're interested, and it's easy to talk to you. So that reflects some of the approach and the values that you even mentioned earlier that you were bringing to the table. I have a question. In your opinion, is it a good approach to do A/B testing? For example, display a percentage of users on a new component and the rest the old one.
It's really hard. It's a hard subject, A/B testing, because they are always. It's hard to not tell the user the thing you prefer, because I think there always a solution that you prefer. The good approach is to propose different A/B testing for the same subject. For example, if you want to test a button, just don't test only one UI with this kind of buttons. Try to put it on different views and see if the patterns is always the same or not, and especially test with different types of users, because at the beginning of our test, it was CSM that test our prototypes, and CSMs know the product because they use it every day. So each change is, oh no, it's too hard. You change everything. No, I just changed one color, but you you just love the tool today. So you have to test different pages with the changes you want to challenge, and try to test the product with different type of users, not only one type.
I think we're mostly out of time there. We do have a final question, but I think we might see if we can answer that offline so that we don't run over for people who I know might have things coming on after this session. So I want to say thank you, particularly to you, Marie, for sharing everything you did today. And thank you everyone here who's been present. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. We really had enjoyed having you here. The replay will be available soon. We'll send it to you, I believe, next week. And we hope to see you again at another Oncrawl webinar. And if you are an Oncrawl user, we hope to see you on May 18th for the big reveal of all of the results of Marie's work as we finally roll out our redesign of the site and the app.
Yes, thank you, everybody.